Ladies and gentlemen, 12th Fret Media is back with another interview. Today we have Quinton, who is an amazing drummer, studio work, his tribute bands. If you need anything, I can honestly say this guy's chops are solid. How you doing today, Quinton?
I'm good, Jacob. How are you?
Doing pretty good. So, I guess let's kind of get right into it. Some things that me and you have talked about in the past. We're both huge Kiss fans. I understand you're part of a tribute group.
I was part of many different Kiss tribute groups for the past 10 years. But as of the end of 2022, I am no longer a part of any Kiss tribute. But it has been a really fun ride, and I'm not necessarily discounting it for the future. But at the moment, it's something that I need to step away from.
Completely understand. And sometimes as musicians, as artists, we got to do that. Sometimes you got to walk away from it for a bit so it can come back to you. Speaking of that, just being musicians ourselves, I know something that me and you have in common that we've touched base on a few times is instruments. Now, one thing that I thought was really cool that we both had in common is the viewpoint that, sometimes the instrument fits the player, but sometimes you have to make the instrument fit. It doesn't always come that way. Can you tell me a little bit more about your viewpoints on that?
Yeah. So really every instrument, every drum kit I've ever bought was based on appearance first. You walk into a music store and you see this striking finish on a drum set, whether that's satin black, rainbow sparkle, brushed silver, um, or maybe even I have an electric kit in front of me, even just the way these look, it's really nice looking. I really like the black and chrome look. I mean, that's a big part of the whole Kiss vibe. But getting back to your question, I've always bought a kit based on how it looks. And lucky enough for me, I found out that it sounds just as good as it looks. And type of heads I use as well, maybe not everyone's first choice, but they work really well for me. And it just works for my sound. And I think a lot of it too comes from how you play the instrument and your years of practice and study into how do you strike the surface of a drum and what type of sticks are you using. A lot of variables to create a sound. So
I would 100% agree with that. I think any musician knows I'm not a drummer, but guitarist, bassist. How you strike a string, how you pick it, what finger you use, whether you're slapping, playing at the bridge, playing at the neck, it all has an impact on the sound. So yeah, it would make sense that the same would go for drums.
totally. And I'm not saying it's hard, it's impossible to get dynamics on any other instrument, but in my opinion, you can get the most dynamic range on most percussive instruments because you don't have maybe a guitar, maybe a piano. I mean, piano is percussive. I'm surprised we're not saying that guitars are percussive, but you just have so much more control over, how soft you hit and how loud you hit and everything in between. And that's really hard to achieve when you have, breath control. It takes probably a lifetime to work on stuff like that. But the dynamic range on a drum set is there's so much in between.
Yeah, I definitely see what you're talking about. And you said a very key word that I'm glad you mentioned because I would have forgotten, but control. And when it comes to drumming and as a bass player as well, control is a big part of what we do. We're really the core of the rhythm section for those of you who are in jazz bands. But yeah, I think the two people that can either bring the group in or just derail the whole thing if they wanted to is really the bassist and the drummers, because we can hear what each other are doing and we kind of keep each other in check. But your timing and your ability to stay in the pocket has been pretty solid from what I've seen, and that's not something I can say for a lot of drummers. How do you feel about just staying in that pocket? What motivates you, or how did you develop your sense of timing?
Uh, you can't go wrong with old-fashioned practice.
True.
And I think if you put in your 10,000 hours, you'll accomplish things that you want to. Not saying that I'm probably not near 10,000 hours. It would be interesting to keep a log of
True.
uh of that, but um growing up and working in bands at a rather young age, some advice that was given was like, you're the drummer, you're basically in control, and do your best to do that role. So what does that mean? There's a couple situations where maybe the guitar player starts off the song and it's either too slow or it's too fast. So then you have to basically, with the reins, pull it back or push it a little forward. So you can start off at whatever tempo that is, but find a way to somehow steer the ship back on course and get everyone back on the tempo that it's supposed to be. So otherwise I'm pretty like on, as far as when I count off, this is the tempo, and I don't waver. I
Yeah.
I I'm not following everyone else. They follow me.
Yeah.
So, but when you saw me, we were playing with in-ear monitors, and in our mix we had a metronome.
Mhm.
So drummers know, musicians know, it's pretty easy to stay on track when you got a metronome, ticking in your ear. But
Very true.
the reason for that is it creates just a more smooth show. And when you saw us, we were the opening act. And when you're the opening act, you're really setting the tone as to how is this show going to run? Is it going to be on time, or is it going to be that show that is very far behind? So that's where a metronome can help big time. But also, just as a drummer, I've found that it can help almost pull back any excitement. For me personally, I'll find that it forces me to play maybe a little quieter than I'm used to. And there's pros and cons to that. I'm sure some people really like that, depending on the room. But it really depends on the situation, and it depends on how much you're able to practice on your own and then as a unit.
And I've noticed that. Definitely one thing I could say, of course, like I said, your timing was spot on, which it makes more sense with the metronome. But also, you really bring a lot to the table when it comes to what might be needed. Because I know during that show, even though you guys were the opening act, there was one spot where I guess a fuse blew. So everyone who had amplifiers had no sound, no microphones, nothing. The drums, however, had that great privilege of not always needing them. And instead of stopping the song, instead of faltering, you just went right into it. So I thought that spoke volumes. Have you ever had any other awkward moments where you've had to kind of step it up or compensate for a mishap on stage?
Uh, not many that come to mind. Or aside from that, that's probably the one that sticks out the most. But um, I can't recollect anything else that required me to either save the day or um, pull anything back together. I want to say that maybe once a guitar went out, like every so often with a band I was playing with, maybe a guitar would cut out, and from there you have three other guys and you're kind of looking at, okay, well, depending on whose guitar went out, whether it was the lead singers, whether it was the lead guitarist, uh, how can we pretend as if this is not happening and just keep the shit moving? So eye contact is a big thing.
Yeah.
It's nice being a drummer because typically you're up on maybe a drum riser and you can kind of survey, you know, what everyone's up to, and you're able to watch side stage, okay, they're taking care of the problem. Um, if it's the lead singer, maybe the bass player would hop in and sing the remainder of the song, and you just have everyone's back. And that's what a band is. It's that gang mentality and just looking out for your guys.
And I'm glad you mentioned being able to make that eye contact because that's one thing that kind of took me back is playing in groups and okay, something's going off, not necessarily a mishap, but people are getting a little too excited with their tempo. It's usually the bass player and the drummer, me looking back at the drummer, them looking at me like, okay, let's slow everyone back down.
Totally.
Yeah.
And again, it depends on your situation and how much time you have to
Hmm.
put into the opening night, for instance.
Yeah.
So when you saw me on tour, we rehearsed, I want to say 3 times, and pretty, yeah, that's really a perfect situation, I think. Um, it's a lot of times when I'm doing fill-in work, it's the day of,
Mm.
and I kind of put my foot down and go, I don't want to have a rehearsal because that one day of pay becomes one day of pay stretched across 2 days.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to be greedy, but time is money, and it's if you can understand those things about eye contact and how to navigate the waters of a fill-in situation, then you'll be good. You can't be in your own world if you're playing with someone for the first time. You have to get your head up, kind of watch people's hands, watch people's, you know, body uh, body language, and just again eye contact, and be on a wavelength through that. You can't talk on stage because you're in the middle of a song. So what are some eye cues that you can do? What are some facial expressions that can help someone understand that, okay, we're coming to the end of the song, or you know all those different things.
Oh
So
yeah, and I think that really helps out, especially on drums. I've been in certain situations where, okay, how can we wrap this up? And the drummer is, okay, I'm going to start slowly playing softer, or I'm going to start bringing the tempo down, and everyone's kind of forced to follow along. So
yeah.
I love that control aspect. I mean, that's definitely needed in a lot of groups. As far as filling in, I know you do some fill-in work, also some studio work, things like that. Um, are there any? I mean, of course, there's going to be pet peeves with anyone, you're filling in, but the dynamics are just different with people you don't know. As a studio musician or as a fill-in musician, is there anything that people should look for if they're going to someone to fill in their band for the very first time? Maybe some do's and don'ts, some etiquette that maybe sometimes people miss.
I mean, communication's a big one, and that's anything. But maybe more specifically, what's the itinerary of the day? When is load in? When are we setting up? Do we get a sound check? Are we backlining? What time are these things at? What time is showtime? What is the itinerary of those showtimes? Um, just any logistics that go into a show. Where can we park? Where are we loading in? Is there a back door? Is there a side door? Is there a front door? Um, all those things.
Yeah.
It's not, now that you ask me, I in the moment I can think of everything, but now you're thinking like it's just kind of common knowledge. Um, like what would you want to know going into a show? And I
Yeah.
try to think about putting myself in the other person's shoes. If I'm hiring someone, I want to make sure that they feel as much in the know as I do. And I'd rather tell them more information than less information. Um, but yeah, communication, I mean, like, so that's maybe like show day, right? For
Right.
fill in work. Also, what's the set list? Is there any special arrangements? If there's a fade out, how would you like to conduct the fade out? Do you want to, slow down at the end? Do you want to do a hard stop? And if it's a really big gig, maybe this requires a phone meeting. Maybe it requires a really well
Hmm.
crafted email or message. So I would say that's the type of thing I would be looking for on the day of a show. But then fill in or session work uh, is again, with communication. What is this song about? Um, for instance, I had session work on Friday, and the song itself had like programmed drums, a synth pattern, and a piano part that was the top line melody of the song. and then I had asked, is this the instrumentation, or what is all being added to this song? So there's going to be guitars, there's going to be bass. The piano melody may not be all on piano, it might be on vocals. And okay, that helps me kind of figure out what type of, how far I can take it. Do I want to pull back the drums? Do I want the drums to be, hit as hard as possible? And then with those program drums and those snare hits, is the person who's hiring me very committed to where those snare hits are, or do they want me to stray a little bit from, the tempos that they chose? Because sometimes I hear different things and they hear different things. They know the direction that they want to go because they can picture
Yeah,
the finished piece in their head. And that's kind of the fun part about working with people, is that they're hearing things that you aren't. And in a way, that's kind of why you hired someone else, is
true.
you're looking to kind of have someone bring up something that maybe you didn't think of. So just communicating about that. And then as far as the other day went, get in the studio, maybe do like a practice run or two. After the first practice run, go back in the booth and go, okay, what do you like about that? What do
Yeah.
you not like about that? And then, okay, let's do another practice run before we actually hit record, like for real. And then kind of touch on those fixed errors, and come to a conclusion on what are you looking for. Did you like these fills? Does this bass drum pattern fit the vision of the song? So, and it
Yeah.
took a bit longer with that particular tune. A lot of times I like to get it in my hands maybe like a week or two prior. And depending on my schedule, if I have more time, I can, really flesh out a whole idea, and then just go in with like 3 to 5 takes and really know what I want. But because this particular song was so stripped back, I didn't even know where the verse was or where the chorus was, because the melody line itself repeated a lot, and that's okay. It was actually really fun to do it that way and change up the process of it. So,
Yeah, and
but above all, sorry, what was that?
I would definitely agree. I mean, communication, like you said, details matter, especially in music, whether it's the logistics, whether it's the song. I think we've all had kind of those moments. Even when I'm doing shows as a reporter, a lot of times it's okay, has the venue been told that I'm coming? Where am I supposed to go? Where can I go and not go? You know, do they know I'm bringing the camera? Like, and a lot of times it does happen where someone wasn't informed. The parking guy has no idea that I'm coming. And just things go a lot smoother when people communicate.
Yeah, and it's hard, right? It's all you're juggling in this hand, and then you're juggling another 6 balls in this hand, and
Hmm.
a lot of times you can miss maybe the finer things. But communication's big, and also just being nice, just
Yes,
being
that's a big one.
polite and kind, and understanding that you hired someone else, so you're entrusting them in their creative decision. If you want something specific, maybe let that creative person know that.
Yes, definitely.
But it's and you learn this. And you're constantly learning. No one has ever perfected this form of communication and professionalism. You're always learning,
Oh yeah, for sure.
and it just takes time. And I'm always learning things. Every video I do, every photo shoot I do, I love everything that comes back, and then I go, but how could it be better? How could we? You reflect on the day and you think, yeah, I could have, trimmed a couple bit of time, or a lot of time, by doing this. Or I like how this looks, but maybe I don't care for how this looks. So next time I'm going to change this.
For sure.
So, but being nice about it, and not being a jerk and thinking that I can't believe this person couldn't do their job. It's
Yeah.
just I mean, I don't even know how much, in another way, how I could explain that. It's just purely be nice and be kind, kill them with kindness.
Yeah, and I've maintained that same policy myself. There have been shows where, I'm showing maybe one of the group's photos, like, "Hey, here's how your set came out," and all of a sudden I've got a security guy over there like, you have to leave, you have to get out of here. And I'm like, whoa, hold on, like I have my credentials, like everything's good. Well, how did you get, then there's the barrage of questions, but it doesn't help if I blow up on him for blowing up on me, just this is what I'm doing, here's my stuff, everything's cool. And 9 times out of 10, you'll get the I'm sorry, I didn't know.
Yeah,
No big deal to make it bigger than it is.
totally. And a lot of times I try to remind myself too, I think above all, the worst situation doing something related to this music world beats any day at an office cubicle, beats any day at like a jobby job.
Oh yeah.
Uh, like if you're able to do music for a living and support yourself with the lifestyle you want to live, that's a pretty kick-ass life,
True.
and not something to kind of take for granted or just complain about
Oh yeah.
all the way one day.
Like I love to tell people, I hope everyone gets to do what they love for a living. I hope everyone gets that dream of theirs. But at the same time, we all have to keep in mind when you get it, not every day is going to be a good day. There's going to be struggles, there's going to be difficulties, there's going to be bumps in the road, but it's still better than doing something you hate.
Absolutely.
So, both of us being big Kiss fans, I want to kind of go back to that for a minute. What was your introduction to Kiss? What really, I guess, attracted you to them or caught your attention? Was it a song? Was it the look? What was it for you?
Uh I was 5 years old. I got a drum set for Christmas, and leading up to Christmas with Saint Nick night, in a stocking, my brother and I got a VHS bootleg tape of Van Halen on the Balance tour, and then Kiss, the pay-per-view concert for their farewell tour. And
Nice.
Van Halen in 1995 was kind of scaled back. They didn't look like they did in 1984. Um, you still have Alex with his huge drum set and everything, but we put the Kiss one in because I think my dad knew that we would really like what was to come. And what was to come is you open up, like the shot opens up and you just see them backstage. And this is like horrible footage, right? We're looking
Right.
at 2000, and video quality is not what it was, but you see Kiss just milling around in the burrows of, an arena. And when you're 5, you're like, man, this is so cool. Like here's all these like weird looking superhero types.
Yeah.
But then came to start of the show, and you basically see Kiss suspend down from the ceiling, and sparks and shit are flying off, and that's pretty impactful when you're 5 years old to see something like that. And they're playing Detroit Rock City, so my dad had shown us the music leading up, and you start pairing, oh, that's that song, and that's what it looks like when it's performed. So the amalgamation of that with a drum set, you're thinking, I can make something out of this probably.
Yeah.
But
And Kiss, I mean,
that's how I got into Kiss, is really my dad.
and I can totally understand that. I mean, that's really the
Go
first
ahead.
film I know of where the drum set levitated. It wasn't just the guys with the guitars, but the drummer was just as big and important to the show as everyone else. And similar story for me. I was about 8. My brother got the VHS Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park. I had never heard of Kiss, but they were the superpowers and the costumes and the makeup and the music was good on top of that. Like pretty much the same kind of story for me. Like that just there was no going back after that.
Yeah, when you're a child, that's the best of all worlds.
Mhm.
I love Batman just as much as I love Kiss, but Batman doesn't play an instrument.
Exactly.
Like
Thank you. That is
he's
my
not the
argument
person.
against that.
Yeah, he's just not the person performing the Danny Elfman soundtrack. And when you hear the
Right.
Danny Elfman soundtrack, which is incredible,
Yes.
it's just not him performing it. So that's what's so cool about Kiss, is it's everything.
Yeah, and I love that you brought that up. I mean, one of my favorite soundtracks, actually, the Michael Keaton original Batman with him and Jack Nicholson, Danny Elfman plus Prince. What an unbeatable combo.
Crazy, right?
Mhm.
I mean, and have we ever seen something like that done ever again? A
Not really,
An
not to
out of
my
this world
knowledge.
artist going on an out of this world film to help create a completely separate score. You know, like I don't believe Danny and Prince worked together, but they both wrote separate scores for this one movie. It's just wacky.
Agreed, and it was done so well too. Um, and just, I mean, so much mood in those movies, you know, and the score had such a great part of that. It really kept everything going. It kept the pace of the movie going, especially with the Joker of all characters. Um, that in mind, of course, Peter Criss, obviously, Eric Carr, Eric Singer, I'm sure are influences on you. What drummers outside of Kiss were you really fans of?
Outside Kiss, love Neil Peart, I love Mike Portnoy, uh, and those are really like the big two. Um, I really like Christian Coma, who goes by CC. He plays for Black Veil Brides. Severely underrated drummer. And I really wish more people would focus on what he's doing and what he has done, because he's just the whole package too. Like what an incredible guy, and is one of the nicest people ever. Like no ego at all. And then really from there, it just depends on the day and kind of the musical mindset I'm in. I like Thomas Lane. Getting into Luke Holland, he's pretty incredible. Eric Imprata is amazing as well. My own drum teacher from years ago is an incredible player and an incredible person. So, like I said, it really depends on the day, but that's a couple of names that I always keep kind of coming back to.
And that's honestly an answer that I love to hear from any musician is it does depend on the day. I mean, I'm a huge Beatles fan, but I can't listen to them every day. You know, there's certain
Yeah.
songs I have to tune out every now and again. So that's an answer I love to hear. To me, that is a great musician's answer. Aside from that, if people wanted to find out more about you, where can they check it out? Where can they get more info if they want to see what you're up to or how to reach out to you for work?
Uh, if you want to know more about what you and I talked about, you can head to my YouTube, youtube.com/at Quinton Kufahl. And then really everything else is just at Quinton Kufahl. Facebook page, however, is at Quinton Kufahl Official. But Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all at Quinton Kufahl. And through any of those messaging services, they're really the best way to get in touch with me, whether that's Instagram or Facebook. So,
That's
yeah,
awesome. So, and I encourage that. This guy is an amazing drummer, amazing musician, and really just was really cool just talking to you after the show. Like one musician to another, it was definitely, I guess you could say, just refreshing, you know, because I don't always get to talk to a lot of the bands, but it was refreshing. Like this is a musician that I could sit and talk to for a good while. So if you guys are looking for a solid drummer, you want to check out some great solos, I'd highly recommend checking out Quinton's stuff. Quinton, I want to thank you for sitting down with us today. This is going to be on YouTube very soon. You guys, check him out, like, subscribe. Quinton, thank you again, man.
thank you. It was a pleasure.